There's a strange moment that happens when your finances finally stabilize, when the constant urgency quiets, the chaos fades, and the numbers stop screaming for attention. And you expect relief to arrive right after, but instead your body stays tense, alert in a way that doesn't match reality. You notice it in how you keep checking things that no longer need checking, in how calm moments feel temporary, and how you hesitate to trust the quiet because it feels unfamiliar, almost suspicious. Nothing is wrong, nothing is actively falling apart, yet you don't feel safe enough to relax because part of you is still scanning for what comes next. Stability doesn't register as permission to soften. It registers as something that has to be monitored, guarded, protected from disappearing the moment you stop paying attention. The panic may be gone, but the vigilance remains. And that gap between external calm and internal tension creates a pressure that's hard to explain because by every visible measure, you should be fine. You're not reacting to a problem anymore, you're reacting to the absence of one. And that's what makes it unsettling, because the system that carried you through instability doesn't know what to do when there's nothing obvious to fight or survive. Instead of relief, stability produces a quiet unease, a sense that the calm is provisional, that this phase requires constant awareness to maintain, and that if you let your guard down, something important could slip away. Even as life becomes more predictable, your internal state doesn't follow because the calm you've reached feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar doesn't feel safe. What makes this phase so disorienting is that stability itself wasn't the environment you learned in, so your system never built a reference point for it. In many early money environments, calm didn't mean safe. It meant temporary, the quiet before something broke, the pause before a bill arrived, a job disappeared, or tension returned. Stability wasn't experienced as a baseline, it was experienced as an exception, something that showed up briefly and then vanished, which trained the system to stay alert even when nothing was visibly wrong. In households where money stress was common, predictability often carried an undertone of waiting because smooth periods were followed by disruption, often enough that calm became associated with anticipation rather than relief. Even when things were okay, they were okay conditionally, dependent on something holding, continuing, not changing. And that conditional safety taught the system that stillness required monitoring. So when financial stability finally appears later in life, it doesn't register as familiar ground, it registers as an unfamiliar state that needs to be managed carefully, because the system learned early that ease was unstable and quiet was not to be trusted. The lesson absorbed wasn't that stability lasts, it was that stability ends, and that expectation lingers long after the original conditions are gone, shaping how calm is interpreted not as safety, but as something provisional that could disappear without warning. What locks this response in isn't conscious thought, it's the nervous system, because systems trained in instability don't downshift automatically when conditions improve. When your body has spent years orienting around uncertainty, it learns to treat alertness as the default state because vigilance once prevented surprise, loss, or chaos. Stability doesn't cue relaxation, it cues monitoring because calm used to be the moment right before something changed. So even when finances stabilize, the nervous system stays active, scanning for early signs of disruption, tracking small fluctuations as if they matter more than they actually do. This is why calm can feel uncomfortable rather than soothing, because the body associates stillness with vulnerability, not rest. Instead of settling, the system stays prepared, holding tension as a form of protection because letting go once meant being caught off guard. Over time, that readiness becomes invisible, mistaken for responsibility or prudence, but it's actually a survival response that never learned how to switch off. Until the nervous system updates its map of safety, stability doesn't feel like a rival, it feels like a phase that requires supervision, keeping the body alert not because danger is present, but because danger used to follow quiet often enough to make calm feel unsafe. Where this tension sharpens is at the level of identity, because the version of you that learned how to survive financial instability doesn't automatically trust the version of you that now lives inside stability. That earlier identity learned how to stay alert, how to anticipate disruption, how to remain useful by noticing what could go wrong, and those traits became part of who you are, not just how you responded. Stability threatens that identity because it removes the conditions that made vigilance feel necessary and meaningful. Relaxing into calm can feel like abandoning the self that carried you through uncertainty, as if letting go of vigilance means becoming careless or detached from reality. There's a quiet loyalty to the version of you that survived stress, because that version kept you safe when things were unstable, and stepping fully into ease can feel like betraying that history. So even when finances stabilize, the system resists settling, not because danger is present, but because stability asks you to become someone who no longer needs constant alertness to feel legitimate. The conflict isn't between danger and safety, it's between who you had to be to survive and who you're allowed to be now. And until that loyalty shifts, stability will continue to feel uncomfortable. At this point, the pattern becomes mechanical because the same psychological forces that once governed chaos quietly attach themselves to calm. Loss aversion doesn't disappear with stability, it sharpens, because now there is something concrete to preserve, so the system treats calm as something that could be lost, rather than something to be trusted. Present bias reinforces this here because the immediate discomfort of letting go feels more urgent than the abstract reassurance that stability will likely continue. Money dysmorphia plays a role here as well because your internal sense of financial fragility often fails to update at the same pace as your circumstances. Guilt conditioning weaves through the response because ease can feel undeserved, as if letting go of vigilance means forgetting how hard things once were. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition, so each time you scan, double-check, or brace during calm periods, the circuit becomes more efficient, teaching the brain that alertness is the correct response to stability. Identity-based income ceilings quietly recalibrate here, not by allowing peace, but by redefining safety at a level that still includes tension, so the system never lets stability feel fully settled. Together, these mechanisms ensure that calm doesn't register as safety, it registers as a condition that must be actively maintained. Once these mechanisms lock together, stability doesn't relax the system, it recalibrates what the system believes it has to defend. Calm becomes something you maintain rather than inhabit, so vigilance doesn't fade, it becomes more refined, harder to notice. Each quiet day reinforces the idea that nothing going wrong is something you achieved through attention, not something you're allowed to trust. Over time, this creates a loop where calm requires effort, effort reinforces vigilance, and vigilance convinces the system that ease would be reckless. Stability stops feeling like a rival and starts feeling like a narrow zone you have to stay inside. The unsettling part isn't that stability feels unfamiliar, it's that the system that carried you through instability never learned how to recognize safety when it finally arrived. So even when nothing is wrong, even when the numbers hold and the margin exists, your body stays slightly braced, as if relaxing would invite the very disruption you worked so hard to escape. Stability doesn't feel like rest, it feels like something you could lose by trusting it too much, leaving you with the uncomfortable question of whether the vigilance you still carry is actually protecting what you've built or quietly preventing you from ever feeling at home inside it.